Now, it's my pleasure to welcome Sister Trudy here with us this morning. We're talking before Mass and just reflecting on how many times Sister's been here, and we think it's 6, so she's no stranger. I think many of you have seen her, met her, heard her before, and appreciate the good things that she does in her life on the other side of the world. Now, Sister Trudy has been in Jerusalem now for 26 years. It's virtually a lifetime, but it's a commitment of tremendous sensitivity and specialness in that she's devoted her life to the needs that are very real over there in that part of the world, and one particular focus being the Palestinian children, which are part of the community of which she's representing. So it's very special to have her with us, and in fact I enjoy a long-term association with her over those 26 years almost, in that the parish has been supportive of the projects in Jerusalem since 2003, back in the days when we used to have parish concerts and in fact devote the proceeds to chosen recipients. And we got to the point of saying that this work that was being done in Jerusalem was very important and beneficial to so many. And many of us too had association with the Sion order through our daughters being educated in Box Hill. So there's a real special connection that has real depth. But that's enough from me, having sort of made a fresh introduction for Trudy. But the reason for being here is to bring us up to date on what's happening in Jerusalem, particularly with the fund, the Notre de Sion Local Children's Education Fund, which is very descriptive of the project that has been and still is. So we'll have a tete-a-tete here with some questions and answers, and welcome your hearing of it all.
Thank you, Harry. Well, good morning, everyone, and I'd like to begin by saying a very big thank you. And I'm very aware that thank you is very inadequate to express the appreciation, deep appreciation on my behalf, but also the community of Our Lady of Sion, Notre de Sion in Jerusalem that I'm part of at Ecce Homo. And we are so grateful for this faithful, generous commitment that the parish has been part of since 2003 in some ways. And it's something that's very important for us because education is one of the greatest gifts that we can give the young people to have a future. And so it's with great gratitude that I'm here this morning to thank you and to say we realise that the latter years have brought a lot of hardship for most people, and therefore your generosity is really, really appreciated. And there are also many needs in our world, so a sincere thank you. So I'll let you come on.
Now, the project itself in Jerusalem was started at the time of the Second Palestinian Intifada, which was a period of great violence and distress for many people. So the community over there put their thoughts together and give rise to this particular fund, which is still existing today, of course. And what I want to ask Trudy is to give us the current position in terms of how many families are involved. Sorry? Better? Good. That's right, always send the flag out. But in terms of the fund and the beneficiaries of it, Trudy will give us something of an update on the number of families and the number of children and how they all fit in.
As Harry said, in the year 2000, the second Palestinian Intifada or uprising began, and it was a very difficult period because the first Intifada had been from the end of the 80s into about 93 93-94, and during that time there had been no school at all. So there was a whole generation, because that continued on after officially it was ended, that didn't go to school. So parents really panicked and schools panicked. They wanted to keep going, and actually the government also encouraged schools to, or groups of people together, to keep education going. So we began then to appeal to the congregation, friends, family, anyone, in order to assist in some way towards education. Since the COVID time, and during that time, Ecce Homo, our big pilgrim house, has been totally empty, and we had to really dismiss all our staff, all of them, except our night guard. And so therefore, we've only just begun to reopen with small groups and only a few staff. We've got 2 communities there, and we try to manage as well as we can. So we made a decision that we would also cut back some of our families. It was very difficult, but at the moment we would probably have, like just before I left for home here, we were able to support about 20 families, which would have been about 50 children in our Christian schools, and we go and pay. We keep a very strict control of the fund, which is only for education, and we have to have receipts and everything else. So a lot of it, our sisters will go to the schools to pay to ensure that everything is above board. And the schools are mainly in Jerusalem, but the people who suffer the most are those in what we call the West Bank, just outside. It's only very short distance from the city of Jerusalem, but Bethlehem and those villages where you have a lot of Christian children, we try to support as many as we can there, because they've had no work and continue not to have work because they don't have permits to come into Jerusalem. So that situation is very dire.
Now, I think Sister's spoken already in the broad picture, but I believe she has some personal stories which might just give you a greater understanding of the needs of people and how they're assisted.
When I was reflecting on these, there were many good, what I call good news stories, but I just picked a couple. One is a young woman called Nadia, who comes from a really almost destitute family, but a mother who is absolutely obsessed by having her children being educated. They had 4 daughters and 2 sons, and the older ones missed out on education, but the 3 younger ones. So we were able, through the support we were receiving, to help them through assist some of the primary school fees. And they were also in a small school that's very close to where I am in the old city, and extremely poor. They take all the children who really have no possibility otherwise to be at school. And they do a very good job and provide good education. So the youngest daughter was able to go through with help to finish her schooling and wanted to go to Bethlehem University. We are unable with the fund to provide education help for universities. We've had to cut it off at the end of secondary school, but we were able to, and again from a couple of people in Australia, to get some funding for her, and she worked really hard and got part scholarship. So she graduated just over a year ago and was able to get a job as an English teacher, and it was a great joy for us to see that. Another one I chose, Maha, who had learning difficulties, and when it was time for secondary school, it was hard to find somewhere that could really help her. They did find a school, but they had to pay, the family had to pay. So again, with support, she was able to go through the school, and in July, when the last year of school, they have to do a government exam, which is quite difficult. She did very well in it, and passed with honours. And so not only for the family but for the school, the school felt they had received an upgrade because her results were so good. So that was a joy. And there are many stories, but one other thing that's important to us as Sisters of Sion is to help young people who want to learn Hebrew. It's very important for the children to know Hebrew, because if they're going to get jobs later, it's a big assistance. But for us also, that once Palestinians and Israelis meet each other, they see each other as people, and it helps break down prejudice. And our hope and our prayer is that through providing education and training leaders, but also young people who've met those that they see as their enemy in a way, that they've met each other, they form friendship. And so that's another hope and prayer we have that will help towards eventual peace. So we have been able to assist a number, usually that is less money involved, but a number of young people. If anyone's interested, we do our best to support them.
Our sister has explained the number situation where we're looking now at maybe 50 children being supported. And I certainly recall from my knowledge that that number is well down on what it was at a peak, where things were much freer, 100 or more, and larger budgets, etc. But it's important that you sort of draw the connection with the current level of funding, which is significantly reduced, and what that means for the future.
Thank you. Yes, the fund has significantly been reduced, of course, and we have very few donors now. To be honest, your community is our sole donor that we can rely on now. We have been able to continue till now because since 4 years, there have been a couple of really big donations, plus always we kept enough for at least 1, if not 2 years, because we didn't want to say to children, now next year we can't support you, so you've got to leave the school. So now we're down to, with knowing that we get your donation, possibly for a couple more years, and that's probably it. But we also thank God, we think since 2003, you have been supporting and others have, and the world situation's really bad. So I'm hoping that at least for another 2 years we can continue, and that is part of life, and it's difficult, but somehow hopefully God will provide.
Well, perhaps a piece of good news is that the accumulated funds that I'm holding at the moment, some $12,343, so that's available to Trudy to take back with her when she goes, in whatever fashion that's organised. Dealing with the Israelis and transferring funds is quite difficult under the existing circumstances, particularly if the word Palestinian is mentioned. But Trudy's working on the best way to do that. So that's excellent from the point of view of our parish, having contributed much the same last year. And I think my knowledge of our parish and the generosity over this period suggests that if we're looking to 2023 and 2024, that we'll be there, that we'll drive it forward and make sure that the part that we've played will continue as long as we can. Of course, there's the other matter too, that if we're pretty much isolated as a contributing entity, that there may be ways in which we can do some work and see if we can expand by finding someone to partner with us as well. And that'll be something that I'll take up further with Trudy. In terms of the situation in Jerusalem, I think something enough has been said, except, what's the COVID effect in terms of both the families and the schools?
Sorry, what was that? COVID effect. Well, COVID, of course, like it has worldwide, has really had a great effect because of unemployment. Like I said, even for us in our convent, having to dismiss all our staff. But the schools are desperate, and they are trying to now appeal to keep going, as the situation is everywhere. So that, plus the political situation, which hasn't changed, we just have to keep hoping. But above all, we ask that you keep praying, that even though I've been there 26 years, I keep begging God every day that somehow God can intervene and that we can look towards a better situation and an eventual peace. And I'd just like to say that it's important that we call it the Education Fund. We don't name any other names because that will help us in how we handle it. So a sincere and big thank you, and I assure you that you're remembered in my prayer every single day, because we are so grateful for you and your families. So blessings.
Thanks. Now, Trudy is here at the moment. She's been here 4 weeks today. She's got communities both here in Melbourne and down in Gippsland, and that's taking a lot of her time, but it's great to have the opportunity to spend time with her, which we've done. And you're going back in November, but you have a special role to fulfil in that time, don't you? There's another sister coming out from Ireland, and Trudy and this other sister, Phil, and the third sister are the ones who are responsible for the congregational finance of the Sion sisters, so that the two of them are going to do some work here. And that's an added opportunity for us to keep the contact rolling. And I'm very grateful for that. Now, there's not much more to say except, again, to thank Trudy for being here. One thing that did happen in our earlier contact in the last month, Trudy gave me some webcasts of information. Now, it's more a question of history and politics, but there's one by a Canadian Jesuit who was originated in South Africa, went to Israel. I think he was Jewish initially, converted to Catholicism and became a Jesuit priest. And he's talking about Palestinian and Israeli relations since 1917, which is the significant time because that was when the Australian Light Horse cleaned up the Turks and drove them out of the Middle East. But if anyone's interested, I can provide the link as well. And that may be just a case of just telling me so. But again, thanks to Father Gerald as well for being, I think, you could say the sponsor of this event today, in that he's been so kind in relation to cutting back his own words so that we would have free time to do what we've done. So thank you all who have contributed to the 1 in 100. It's pretty much as defined. The intention was to get 100 people every month to donate $10, about $12,000 a year, and we're right on the spot. So thank you one and all.